This is the Orient Ray II. We are going to crack it open and see what we got inside. So this I got from Joma Shop. They are selling these for much lower than anybody else. And I see no reason not to pick it up from, I know it's a gray market dealer, but I see no reason not to pick it up from them if they are going to give me a great deal on a cheap, reliable watch. So not, you know, any kind of flamboyant packaging. It's literally just a piece of paper that they send it in. There's your Orient logo on the outer box casing. Again, Orient logo. Now, already for this price range, this is a pretty substantial little package. I've bought watches for much more than this one cost that had worse packaging. So let's see how we get this guy open. Okay, here we go. That's a pretty nice open there. We've got our manual, how a watch works, and there she is. There's the Orient Ray II. Let's get the plastics off and have a look. All right, plastics off, and we're back. Actually, before we go any further, I will say I'm just really impressed with this little packaging. It feels kind of reminiscent of some vintage packaging that I found on you know, a number of what Oruses and Zodiacs. I think that this little release here is great. I will never use this box again, but I really enjoyed opening it. It's a great little box. Okay, here's our watch. This is obviously the black variant of the Ray II. And it is a 200-meter dive watch, which has this really nice looking rotating bezel. Now this is something I've seen on other reviews. This is really difficult to rotate, so no worries about it changing time on you if you're using it as a dive watch, which I very much doubt you are, because if you're diving, likely you're getting a nicer watch where you're using a dive computer. But this bezel is just, she is tight. I think even though we just started this this review, I think that this is probably the one thing that I dislike most about this watch is that bezel. You can hear that click. I will say, given that it is tight, there is no back play. There's no play of any kind here. It is very solid. That's just the watch moving there. It's a very solid little bezel. Screw down crown. Here's your crown guards. They don't quite meet to the crown. There's a bit of a tolerance there. There's a gap. You can see right through it. But it is a screw down crown, given that it's a dive watch. There it is. So we've got day and date. So the first position should be your day and date set. There's the date. Or there's the day, I'm sorry. And then there's the date should be the other way. There it goes. I will say that it doesn't set perfectly. You do have to adjust it a little bit to get those day and dates sitting properly in the date window. It is a framed window, however, with a split down the center, and that is a nice touch. You don't see that on a lot of watches, especially in this price range. It is hacking, and I believe hand winding. We can double check that. That red second-hand tip is, I do love having a red second-hand tip, which it looks to be loomed as well, and we'll get a loom shot in here. It holds up pretty well. I'm not going to say it's Seiko levels of loom, but it's really close. It's a good bright green glow, and even the second-hand, that little tiny bit of loom, you can see that scooting around on the dial there. I would expect that bezel pip to get dim much more quickly than the rest of the loom plots, particularly that heavily loomed hour and minute hand. The crown stem feels like it could be flimsy. It's definitely a small crown, not a bad thing, but it's yeah, that date change happens over about an hour. So that crown, is, if you're wearing it all the time, it's not an issue. If you're constantly rotating your watches and you want to be able to wind and set your watch, there's a little bit of wiggle there. Again, for the price point, not a big deal. So this is a hand winding movement. Speaking of the movement, this is an Orient in-house movement. It's used on a couple of their watches, but the difference between this movement and the original Ray, I think if you look up the original Ray, you'll see there was a pusher here, which I find is pretty hideous and unnecessary to be on the watch, and that was so that you could change the date. But they have corrected that with this movement, and so you're getting, as far as in-house goes, there's only a couple of watch brands that do in-house movements at a reasonable price point, and they are essentially Orient and Seiko. So given that it's an in-house movement, it is fairly slim for a 200 meter dive watch. So this guy has a screw down case back protecting that in-house movement. There it is. Has little dolphin logos on it. Nothing fancy. Just looks, it's a etched screw down case back. Everything about the head of the watch is nice. The only detractors for the head of the watch being that maybe the bezel is a little too difficult to rotate, but again, it's not wobbly, doesn't have backplay, so that's great. And that the crown stem, the crown itself, very slightly wobbly. You'll find that on a lot of watches. I think that the rest of the quality of the case head is really good for this price point. Sloping down lugs, they're not super sharp. It's a high polished side of the case, and then you've got radial brushed lugs there. That might be difficult to see, but the brushing on the lugs is radial there. It is a signed crown with the Orient logo on there. Now, I do really like the look of this bracelet. It's got a very Seamaster 300 look there, almost like a 5-link. Those are in fact 3 links with just polished outer edges on it, but I think that looks great. The clasp, it's what you would expect from this price point. It is not a milled clasp, it is a stamped clasp. It is a double pusher deployant clasp with a lock, so it's not going anywhere. That is, it is a pretty solid connection, plenty of room to get your finger in there to open it up. No diver's extension, despite the fact that this is a dive watch, supposedly. There's no diver's extension on this watch, so you would probably want to switch to a different bracelet if you were actually going to use it. But I think that it's not, it's a 3-piece connection, so it's not fully articulated, but I think it'll be drapey and plenty comfortable on the wrist. The bracelet is also push pins, so you see there's your push them out little indicators in which way the pin needs to be removed. Signed clasp. It's a tiny clasp actually. This piece here is pretty short. Unless you have really large wrists, that won't be an issue. Doesn't seem that there's any AR coating to speak of. You can see all those reflections popping through the glass. If you're looking for an alternative to the SKX, which has been discontinued, they now make the Seiko 5 sports line, but they are not screw-down crown, and so not 200 meter water resistant. I mean, this is a good alternative. It is steel, stainless steel. It's not terribly heavy being stainless steel with a full bracelet. You know, I think you could do a lot worse for the money. I think being an automatic 200 meter water resistant watch with a good amount of lume, day-date function, a nice looking bezel, you're really kind of hard up for something that can compete with this. It does have hollow end links. Again, for this price point, what do you really expect? I'm sure you can find yourself a nice strap code bracelet, or you can put it on a piece of rubber, or you could probably even dress it up with some leather. I think this is a decent desk diver. It's a decent entry level watch for someone who's trying to get into automatic watches. The handset on it is pretty nice. So you've got that sword hand for the minutes, and then this kind of separated hour hand. So there's a piece that's kind of indicating to you that it is the hour hand in case there's any question on that in the dark. And so there it is on wrist. You know, even just draping, it's really comfortable. I think there's no half link lugs here, or half links here for the bracelet. You do have 3 micro adjusts. It's kind of on the shy side of micro adjust, but you know, I'm sure you could find a comfortable spot for this. I say if you're looking to get into watches, if you're, you know, just dipping your toe in the water of mechanical, this is a great spot to dip your toe in. And if you decide it's not for you, I'm sure you can flip it for not much of a loss. So I'll throw some stats up on the watch for you here. Let me know what you think in the comments if there's a better entry-level watch that's got similar or better specs. If you have this watch and you have anything that you don't like about it, I'd love to know. And whether or not you'd go with the SKX over this, even though they are more expensive, becoming harder to find. You know, I think it'd be nice to know why you'd spend that extra cash and not go with the Orient. Alright, thanks for watching.